movies of 2024. I had a hard time making this list. I was originally just going to do 5, which is the same number as the best movies list. But then I went through all of my reviews from this past year and saw that no, we can't limit this to 5. There are so many bad movies to go through. I went all the way up to 11. Starting the list off at number 11, Atlas. Man, oh man, I don't know how Netflix is able to survive, is able to still exist with all of the bullshit that they produce as far as movies go. Sure, they have great TV shows, and sure, they are starting to get into the live event business, but they pump so much money into some of their movies. And I'm saying the really bad movies, which is a majority of them. This film is no different. You have Jennifer Lopez, who you could argue, when was the last time she was in a good movie of note, especially starring? But this plot, I mean, they tried to do something futuristic. They tried to do something with technology that I guess you could argue is pretty relevant. But this is the dumbest version of this type of story that anyone could produce ever. And I kind of feel bad for Simu Liu, who he used to be Shang-Chi. I guess technically he still is Shang-Chi. But what the fuck? What has he been in? What has he done since being in Marvel? Can we get that Shang-Chi sequel going, please? So he doesn't have to do shit like this anymore? Number 10, The Crow remake. This movie is lucky it's not higher on the list, because I'm sure for other people it would be higher on their list. I chalk it up for myself that it wasn't nearly as bad as it could have been, and it wasn't even nearly as bad as I expected it to be, but it was still bad. It was still unneeded, unnecessary. I think that original film from the 90s with Brandon Lee still holds up to this day, still has its own unique style to it and tone. And if you're going to update it and modernize it, don't do some bullshit like this, making your Crow character look emo and not look nearly as intimidating. I like this actor as well, Bill Skarsgård. It pains me to talk about his character and talk about him in this film, because I don't necessarily think he's bad, but I also don't think he's written to be all that intimidating or all that menacing when he becomes the Crow either. They try to do some action stuff. They try to do some gnarly, gory, rated R stuff, but the supernatural elements, at least on the villain side of things, I did not care for. I did not believe this love relationship between him and Shelley, which is surprising because I believed it in the original. You cannot help but compare it to the original, and it falls short in so many ways. Number 9, Divorce in the Black. It would not be a worst movies list if a Tyler Perry movie did not make the cut. And this is obviously up there, starting with the craziness of that funeral. I'm talking the first 5 minutes of the movie. It goes batshit crazy. And then you have Megan Good's character, who is somehow, some way, getting over this husband that treated her like shit and that she stayed with for so many years. And then when she finally leaves him and starts dating this generic, boring, giant type dude, I think her ex, that's when the husband goes apeshit and goes crazy and goes over the top. Everything that Tyler Perry loves to write about. And for all the people who get mad that I shit on Tyler Perry movies, tell me when I'm telling lies that this man, Tyler Perry, does not make the same movie with the same similar plot of these relationships and how bad these men are. It's the same bullshit over and over again. Can you at least point me in a direction where he did something different? And I'm not talking about a Madea film. Number 8, Venom: The Last Stand. You could argue that maybe this is the best out of the 3 Venom movies that have been made, which isn't saying much. I would also argue that this is one of the dumber of the Venom films, which also is actually saying a lot because, boy, did you see Let There Be Carnage? I'm at the point where these movies have long passed my anger level, have long passed me giving a shit and having any hope over Venom being taken seriously as a character. Venom used to be my favorite Spider-Man villain of all time, but these films single-handedly have destroyed that for me. I don't look at Venom as a character the same anymore. I don't even look at Tom Hardy anymore as an actor, which is sad because he is a good actor on paper, but you would never know watching these films. Number 7, Joker Folie à Deux. And granted, I know there is a small portion of people who do enjoy this film, who did enjoy this movie when it came out, and are defenders of this film. And that's fine. That's not going to change my opinion. I said what I said in my review as far as there are good elements and interesting elements story-wise with this film. But what ruins it is the singing. There's so much singing. The singing here and singing there. I understand people who went into this film expecting Joaquin Phoenix's Joker to actually become traditional Joker, and maybe they even somehow, some way expected him to fight Batman in this movie. I never had those expectations. I never expected any of that. But I also understand that side of things. I'm just more upset over the pacing of the film, how long it was, how much singing there was. There was entirely too much of it. And then you get to the end, and I get the frustration. You've watched 2 films, and you feel like it was all a waste of time. A lot of this movie feels like Todd Phillips hated the fact that the first Joker film made so much money, got so popular, and he was forced to make a sequel, even though he made a shit ton of money to do it. But he resented the fans for probably getting the wrong messages out of that first Joker film, so he made us suffer and made a shitty film to follow up. Number 6, Rebel Moon Part 2. This is one of those movies that I think should put an end to the defense of Zack Snyder as a director. I was once a defender of Zack Snyder, just as far as saying, well, he's not as bad as people say. And I still think he has some qualities from his cinematography, from certain shots in his movies that do look like a painting or do look gorgeous and whatnot. But from a storytelling point of view, his movies all really kind of suffer from the same issues where it's generic and it's lifeless and there's no relatability to his characters at all. It really is just point A to point B to just, and here's the ending, here's the big fight. And it's rinse and repeat. It's a bunch of characters, side characters that you don't give a shit about at all. Even trying to present their backstories, it's just rushed through. It's just told to you with no feeling, no substance. And I feel bad because I like this lead actress and I was excited to see her star in a big budget sci-fi action type film, and it just feels like a waste. Number 5, Mea Culpa. What do you know? Another Tyler Perry movie. Boy, he's here twice. And somehow he made a movie that was even worse than the last movie we talked about. Kelly Rowland. I know that maybe not everybody takes her seriously as an actress or even as a singer. I mean, look who she was next to for all those years. Beyonce, right? Here's a chance where she could have been like, hey, notice me. Hey, I have some talent too. And I'm not saying that she's necessarily the worst thing ever, but the writing for her character did not help her. It really didn't. Her character is written to be so weak and so easily manipulated. She's gullible. She just goes along with this guy who is the worst game spitter I think I've ever seen. And he mumbles through most of his lines, which I guess is an actor fault, maybe the director. We all know Tyler Perry doesn't direct actors all that well, but there's no scene in this film that has me buy that this woman would leave her husband for this guy who she's representing, by the way, on trial for murder. I mean, holy fuck. And then don't get me started with the twist ending that basically turns into a Scream film with this family that's now trying to kill Kelly Rowland. Fucking hell, man. I can't believe that he gets paid this much money to make this much bullshit. Number 4, a recent addition, a big reason why I blew up my list, Kraven the Hunter. Now, thankfully, it's the end of the Sonyverse. And granted, I saw this recently, so maybe this is fresh in my brain. But this was bad. This was very, very bad and so rough to sit through. Seeing actors like Aaron Taylor Johnson and just so many people, Russell Crowe, who we know are better than this. We have seen be capable of doing better than this. Some of these actors have won Oscars. Some of these actors are capable. And this movie makes them all look amateurish, makes them all look like they've never done a film ever before. The director, bless his heart, tried to make people give it a chance, and I think that only did it worse, because the people that did give it a chance said, this is some bullshit. You lied to me. You lie. The only positive thing I guess I can say is that I don't know if Sony eventually was planning on adding Spider-Man to it, but thankfully this universe is done. It's over, so Spider-Man will not be dragged into this. Whether it's Tom Holland or any other Spider-Man, they will not be lumped into this pile of bullshit that they have been getting away with for years now, living off of Marvel's name. Number 3, Argyle. I can't believe that a Matthew Vaughn film is this high on my worst of list for any year, really, because Matthew Vaughn used to be one of my favorite directors ever. He was high up there with his earlier work, just the freshness and energy that he brought to his movies, but also the attention to detail with the storytelling and the fleshed out characters. I'm talking about his early Kingsman films, or at least the X-Men First Class. I remember people who were begging for him to potentially direct a Superman film. Thank God we dodged that bullet. Imagine how silly and goofy a Superman movie would have been if it was made today by today's Matthew Vaughn. I don't know what happened to this guy. I don't know why he has leaned so much into the goofiness, which granted was in the Kingsman stuff, but I feel like he either took the wrong critical acclaim that he gained from those films, he took the wrong things and just doubled down on them, and now all of his movies are so colorful and so silly and so over the top and just so much goofy music and the action, and I had a horrible time watching this film, watching these actors. Once again, a great cast who was just bogged down by a terrible, terrible script. This was brutal, man. Absolutely brutal. Number 2, Borderlands. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking that I'm a huge Borderlands video game fan, and that's why this is so high on my list, because, of course, it has personally offended me, right? No. I have no attachment to the video games. I've never played a Borderlands video game. This is not that. This is me just watching this as a movie and saying, what the absolute fuck? This was awful. This was terrible. I can only imagine what true game fans of this property felt about this movie. This was tough. Between the special effects and CGI that I thought looked like shit, between the casting, though a lot of the actors I might have liked, right? Kate Blanchett and Jamie Lee Curtis, but I don't think they were right for the roles that they were casted in. Never mind, also Kevin Hart and just some of these actors. I'm like, why are they here? Why? And then the story was just very generic. The story was just uninspired, and nothing about this movie screamed fresh, even though it was a brand new property for me, even though it was something that I was hopefully going to experience and immerse myself in this world. I couldn't care less. If anything, this movie made me less interested in ever playing the video games, because I don't want any more of this world. And number 1 for the worst movie of 2024, it's Madam Webb. I know people are saying about Kraven that it was the worst Sony film. Again, it's recency bias. Go back and rewatch Madam Webb. Madam Webb, this year, 2024 was not a good year for comic book films. You would think that comic book movies are dying just based off of this year alone. This was rough. This movie was rough. And not just because I'm a comic book fan, not just because I'm a Spider-Man fan, and it's more of the same. It's more of Sony not knowing what to do with the property. It's Sony not knowing how to handle this property to still make it interesting after all of these years. I'm just talking about from a pure filmmaking standpoint, from a pure film watching standpoint, the technical aspects of it, the ADR going on, which is some of the worst I think I've ever seen, the bad costumes, the bad acting, the bad dialogue. I feel bad for some of these actors. I do, because maybe they didn't know, right? They didn't know how bad this was going to be. They just saw Marvel on the timesheets and said, oh, hey, I'm in. Only to realize, I think that's what Dakota Johnson said, actually, in an interview, that she did not know this was Sony Marvel. She thought this was Marvel. So she thought this was going to be something special. She thought this was going to be some actual good shit. Only to realize, oops, I didn't read the fine print. Fire your agent, which I think she did. Good for her. It's unwatchable, like everything. I can't think of one good thing. Actually, I take that back. Adam Scott, he was pretty decent. But other than that, man, fuck this movie. Fuck this movie so hard. Really, fuck all of these films. At the end of the day.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you.
So guys, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of my worst of list? Do you agree, or do you have any films that you think I left out? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later.